dramatic stuff right there. All right, without any further ado, let's give it up. Mark Toro, Chairman and Co-founder of North American Properties. Mark, thanks for having us here today.
Thank you, Will, and welcome to Bisnow, and welcome to you all. Welcome to the reimagined Colony Square, and thank you for wearing pants, because I'm confident that most of us have attended the last 3 or 4 Bisnow events in our underwear. I was on a board call this morning with City of Refuge, and I must admit that I was, what do they call it, the Zoom mullet, you know, business on top and party on the bottom. So I had this shirt on, all dressed up, and in my jockey shorts. But that's how we're living our lives nowadays. So welcome. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the power of community. It's not something I think that we invented, but it's something we've developed over the years. You could say that we've developed a vaccine, to be in current terms. Not a vaccine for COVID by any means, but a vaccine for this. We live in a digital world. We are arguably the most connected civilization in the history of man. And yet we're isolated, we're lonely, and we're depressed. And that was pre-COVID. So through the development, the repositioning of Atlantic Station, the development of Avalon, and now the redevelopment of Colony Square, we've sort of devised a formula for this vaccine. I'm going to share with you the ingredients of that formula. I'm going to share with you what it means to us from a real estate value perspective, and how we've created value in deploying this vaccine. And then share with you how it's worked during COVID, which has been a challenging time for all of us in this business. First ingredient to the vaccine is engagement. This is a town hall meeting we did here at Colony Square probably 3.5 years ago. This space, which many of you will recall, was the mall that we demolished, which was right outside this window. This window didn't exist because this building is new. But the fact is, we brought the Midtown community into Colony Square having been an iconic property for many, many years, and asked them what did they want it to be. And then created the Colony Square brand to represent the personal brand of the community that we serve. Those communities that we serve vary drastically. So the Avalon, the North Fulton community versus the Midtown community at Colony Square, or the Cincinnati community at Newport on the Levee, are each and distinctive in their viewpoint and their perspective. And the approach is to match the brand of the community, of the property that serves that community, with the personal brand of the residents of that community. In these 8 properties that we've developed over the last number of years, each of them has a different brand, a different perspective, a different offering, because each of them serves a different community. And a brand is not a logo. For those branding folks in the room, it is more about a lifestyle. It's more, it influences everything from architectural design to the color of the eyes of our concierge. Control was a major component of the success, specifically at Atlantic Station, the repositioning, at the development of Avalon, and here at Colony Square. These 6 properties actually had 6 different development teams, many of them in different ownership. And the key was to determine who on that team believed what we believed, and essentially dismiss those who didn't. It was a critical component that we maintain control of the brand and the integrity of the brand. There's no place at Avalon or at Colony Square where you will see the words North American Properties. It's not about us. We see branding in real estate go the other way, right? So you see a lot of multifamily REITs that brand their properties of the name of the company, right? I won't name them. Simon, as an example. Who cares that the mall, that Atlantic Square, is a Simon mall? I believe that Simon cares that, but I don't know that the guest or the resident or the local community cares that it's a Simon mall. Design is a critical component in every real estate enterprise, but in our case, it was all about 20 by 20. From the back of the curb to the storefront and 20 feet up. The pedestrian experience is paramount in creating a community opportunity, someplace to people to come and be. And what we've seen, especially during the pandemic, is that people are craving that human interaction and that IRL experience. The fact that we're all sitting here in this room, albeit a bit weird, with masks and 6 feet apart, we're here. And I think that to the extent that Will and his team are now starting to roll out in-person Bisnow events, is testament to the fact that we're ready to get out of off our couches and put our pants on. Commerce is obviously a big piece of what we do. Our DNA is in retail, but the fact is it drives, the commercial activity drives human interaction. If you look at any, and we take a lot of our cues from European plazas and other cities that have vibrant street cultures. Commerce, stores, shops, restaurants are what is driving that level of activity, because it provides people an opportunity, a reason to be there. Food and beverage obviously is the best opportunity for people to be, and the fact that here, this is Rumi's patio at Avalon. You'll see Rumi's here at Colony Square in June or July, and they are expert at activating the patio. The patio then activates the street. The street activation is what draws people. You know, the fact that it's not lost on us that the thing that draws people is people. And we can create all the public realms and parks and parklets and plazas and places for people to gather, but unless there are people in that place for a reason, whether it's commerce or an event or an activation, that place is just a landscape architect's wet dream. These spaces are designed to house these experiences before the pencil goes to paper, and that public realm is specifically designed to house that experience. Which brings us to programming. The team here at Colony Square or at Avalon or Newport or Birkdale, the teams that drive the guest experience, whether it's our valet, concierge, or events teams, are creating experiences for the community to come and be, and to draw more community members. This is a charity event we do at Avalon every year for Bert's Big Adventure. We essentially take Avalon Boulevard and put a runway down the middle, and it's a fashion show for the charity, or it's comedy in Palmer Plaza. This looked a little different this summer. This obviously was last summer, but we still hosted events during COVID in order to give our community an opportunity to come out and be. And obviously, yoga in the Plaza. We're actually doing yoga here in the Plaza at Colony Square for the first time this fall. And every one of our socially distanced rings sold out every night. Last night we did movie night here at Colony Square, and it sold out. In fact, it has sold out for the entire series. So if you want to watch Christmas shows, you can come and stand in the back. Social media and PR is how we drive everything we do. We have not, to my knowledge, spent a nickel on traditional advertising, whether it be print, video, TV, or radio. The two ladies you see pictured in this photograph are what we call influencers. They have a following. I think combined they have 210,000 followers on Instagram. And City Peach on the left can be seen in our Instagram stories doing personal shopping, trying things on, and she films herself inside the dressing room. It's a very unique way to communicate, but it is where we live today. People live, that's the good news, or maybe bad news, is the fact that we spend our time on Instagram. In fact, I'm looking at our team in the back, Kaylee, Barbara, and Anila, all on their phones. I guess they're working. Sorry, ladies. Or they're checking their Instagram. They're posting to Instagram. Service and hospitality is a critical component to what we do, and not only in the retail space, or the hotel space, or the restaurant space, but in the multifamily space and in the office space. Each of these silos, these product types that had previously been asset classes that we would characterize in the real estate parlance, are now all merging into the hospitality space. And we're going to talk to David Marvin here in a minute about what the hospitality space looks like today, but it is all becoming one and the same. Ritz-Carlton Leadership Center is a group we turn to initially train our teams in the delivery of five-star service, and we now advance that by not only training our teams, but recruiting teams from the hospitality business, from Four Seasons and Ritz-Carlton and others. Operations is a critical component, and excellence in operations and delivery of service and experience. You've experienced it here this morning. This is the lineup that we do twice a day at Avalon, like you would see in a hotel. The only individual that is a North American Properties employee is our concierge to the right. Everyone else is a third-party vendor, but all of them are badged Avalon. They fly the Avalon flag, they bleed Avalon brown. They are all trained, onboarded, and go through the hospitality training that our employees go through on a daily basis. And last but not least, it's about giving back. This is an event we hosted on October 8th here in the Plaza at Colony Square. It was the opening event. It was for the City of Refuge. It's called The Gathering. It's our annual fundraiser. We raised $700,000 for the City of Refuge. We host hundreds of events every year and give back to the community that has supported us. And the net result is community. This is the opening of the Grove here at Colony Square on May, Tres de Mayo, so it's the 3rd of May last year. And the community that you see gathered here is the community that we polled when we first engaged them in the mall 3 years prior. By engaging them at the outset, they had authorship, pride of ownership, and they now are coming out to support us. So a little bit about real estate value, what we call the Avalon effect. Office space is leasing for $34 a square foot, 53% above the market. The hotel, pre-pandemic, was running at a 155 RevPAR index. Multifamily at $240 a square foot, or 47% above the market. And single family was selling at double the market. You can buy a house across the street for half what you can buy it at Avalon. There are only 101 of them. Then came COVID. So this is the April 2nd headline of the Atlanta Constitution, and all of us were impacted in many ways, personally, professionally, and clearly from a real estate perspective. First and foremost is the hospitality industry. The hotel at Avalon was never closed, but was essentially shut down for a number of weeks. But this is the STAR report from the week before Thanksgiving. RevPAR index, as David well knows, if your RevPAR index is 100, you're on par with your comp set. So this essentially indicates that the hotel at Avalon was operating during that week at 4x the local market revenue per available room. That is significant because this is double what we were running during the pre-COVID times. Maybe and this is against the local comp set. What I'm most impressed about is that this comp set is what we call comp set 2. This is the Intercon in Buckhead, Westin Perimeter, Le Meridian, Lowe's, Whitley, Grand Hyatt. It's essentially the 4-star hotel, full-service hotel comp set in all of Metro Atlanta. In that case, we were running more than double. Now, what it probably more so means that the comp set is so badly depressed that the Avalon experience and the community that's been created at Avalon have been propped up in contrast. But it's all about footfall and feet on the street. This is data from 2019 for 5 of the significant retail outlets in Metro Atlanta. You see Avalon at 5.5 million, Lenox at 6.9, Perimeter 5.9, and so forth. Notably, by the way, we were all surprised, all of our retail team were surprised that in 2019, Avalon had twice the number of people visit that Ponce City Market did. I, for one, thought that there was much more, because of all the noise we hear about Ponce, forgive me for being a little bit competitive, that we expected to be higher. So this is post-COVID. This is during COVID. This is from March 15th to last week. 3.1 million at Avalon, 2.7 at Lenox, 2.7 at Perimeter, 1.4 at North Point, and 1.1 at Ponce. My belief is, A, Avalon is an outdoor venue. B, our retailers and restaurants are still serving the community. C, the community has embraced us and has that pride of authorship and ownership because it's a mature component of their lives. It is their third place. And we are still, our DNA is in retail. In 2020, we signed 20 leases at Avalon and opened 11 retailers. But we say it's not about the stores, it's about the stories. Maybe my favorite metric of all of the things that we measure is engagements. We've had 68 marriage proposals at Avalon. Which puts us, I guess, about almost one a month. And we're actually already on our third marriage proposal here at Collins Square. Rebecca pointed out the other day that we had a pop-up here in the Plaza. So my challenge to you is this. What are you going to do in your asset class to take it from commodity to community? Whether it's multifamily, office, hotel, retail. I guess you can't do a lot in industrial if your residents are Amazon boxes. But there is something that can be done. And are we inviting competition in doing so? Absolutely. But my personal belief is that we can do better in creating stickiness in our assets by creating community in each of them. So I'm going to move on. Will? On to David.
Sounds good.
All right, David, Mark, you want to join? David, I'm not going to introduce you because I think you go without introduction. But David Marvin, maybe I am. I've known David now for about a decade. He's been active in the Atlanta and the regional hotel market for many more years than that. And we're here to talk a little bit about the hospitality space. So anything you want to share, David?
Sure. Awesome. Well, first of all, a very impressive presentation and congratulations on your success at Avalon and I'm sure your success here at Colony Square. I think that your drive to create community, to create a sense of place, to create an experience that people can connect with is really essential, and it's what we strive to do in our own universe of restaurants and hospitality. Legacy Ventures, the firm that I founded and direct, has been in business for 25 years. We started in business downtown Atlanta. Really, I think it's safe to say it was motivated by the Olympics, by the coming of the Olympics, and what that portended for revitalization of downtown Atlanta. And we've gone on to really create a signature portfolio downtown Atlanta, but we've sort of grown our business beyond pure development, pure downtown Atlanta, into other geographies and into support of vertical development. We now have a hotel management company. We have a restaurant company that concepts and executes F&B facilities. We're integrated in terms of design, construction, finance. But going back to the bad news, our signature portfolio is downtown Atlanta. And COVID has hit really no market category more impactfully than city center. What I used to be really happy about was the balance of demand generators we enjoyed downtown Atlanta in the 5 hotels that we managed downtown, and roundly 20 F&B outlets that we managed downtown Atlanta. So downtown, probably best known for meetings, large gatherings, whether they be sporting events or the Merchandise Mart or the Georgia World Congress Center citywide kind of events. Secondly, corporate meetings. The Ernst & Youngs, the Coca-Colas of the world, putting together gatherings. And then finally, and this was a relatively late development during our 25-year tenure downtown, leisure. There's effectively evolved around Centennial Olympic Park a necklace of world-class, uniquely Atlanta attractions, beginning with the CNN Center, which predates, now closed permanently. But then, of course, the Georgia Aquarium was a big game changer, and others. So the first generator categories of conventions and meetings and then business travel have really dried up during COVID. We saw, as we moved from March to April to May through the summer, some life on the leisure side. In fact, probably the demand group that's strongest is the drive to leisure, and so sort of under the category of a staycation, people were coming to downtown Atlanta to visit in a more restricted kind of way, the aquarium and so on and so forth. But just to kind of wrap this up, I think we see the, a point that I think we wanted to talk about is sort of the disparity between how hospitality is doing in suburban and destination leisure or resort markets versus CBD markets. And fact of the matter is that the suburban markets are doing materially better, and the destination, particularly the drive-to destination resort kind of markets, are doing very well. Maybe some of the reasons are obvious under the current pandemic situation. People are able to social distance more. Suburban hotel, you typically have a surface parking lot. Public transportation isn't utilized. People are able to distance more effectively. And then just, the desire to enjoy destination resort communities as people were hibernating during COVID. But statistically, interesting fact that was just published in CBRE's report regarding the third quarter, there's the two markets of suburban and basically destination resort used to comprise about 25% of hotel demand. And that was in 2015. Fast forward to the experience of the last 6 months under COVID, that number has doubled. So certainly overall demand is reduced, but 50% of the demand now finds its way to suburban. So we operate a number of suburban hotels that are just in occupancy terms are doing 65% occupancy, having trouble getting rate, but 65% occupancy. Whereas our city center hotels continue to languish in the 30% occupancy range, in the 30 to 35%. So anyway, I'll stop there and see if you want to direct the conversation.
Well, suburban versus urban is a big topic currently, and the fact that the mass exodus, so to speak, is underway with gateway cities like New York and San Francisco, where major lockdowns are occurring and people are leaving. Will, as an example, moved out of New York City at the pandemic to Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. Is that right?
That's right.
And is enjoying a new lifestyle. So I think we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of people move into suburban communities or ex-urban communities or resort communities and work from anywhere. We're going to talk to Kennedy about the urban versus urban, but the fact that you're the resident hospitalitarian, as Danny Meyer would say, both in food and beverage and in hotels, you find yourself at ground zero with the real estate impact of the pandemic. What do you see as the relief? When will this resolve itself? What will it look like? You've got the clearest crystal ball in the room. I would hazard a guess to say.
Yeah.
What's your take?
And I'm wearing pants.
Right. Thank you.
Well, listen, I think there's two factors at play. One is people gaining confidence in being out in public and socially interacting. And, I think that maybe the safe answer is that happens when an effective vaccine is widely distributed, when a good part of the country has been vaccinated. Interestingly, Dr. Anthony Fauci was quoted this week as saying he thinks that the return of big meetings, of full-on football and others, basketball and arena kind of events, will be comfortable. People feel safe, and they'll act on that at the end of the summer 2021. I think that sounds right. The vaccine will be available. Is being rolled out now. There'll be a measure of vaccinations in the first quarter, but really the bulk of it will be the second quarter, and people will feel comfortable about being out, being protected. The second dimension of the question, I think, is what habits or patterns have changed in a durable kind of way. I think that's really a very relevant question, say, for the office market, and maybe we'll hear about that. But what about with regard to hospitality? And I think that some change that reduces hospitality demand is probably going to stick. For example, one of our demand generators is corporate meetings, and we've all, whether or not we wanted to, we've all learned how to have Zoom meetings, and for a lot of people, that's an effective way to meet. And a lot of CFOs are thinking, wow, we're actually saving a lot of money on travel. So I think there will be some rethinking about corporate meetings. There's also, how important is it to get my sales team out and to attend conferences and to cultivate relationships with regard to my business. And I think there may be some reduction in that. It's sort of a structural shift. At the same time, I think the human spirit is alive and well, and I think that people really enjoy, value social interaction. I think that, I think of young people today coming up in their career, and how awful it would be if they were relegated to interacting with their bosses and mentors and colleagues in a Zoom kind of way, as opposed to having some personal one-on-one. And I think that I think a lot of business, a lot of commerce is relationship based, and so I think that personal interaction is the same. But I think we perhaps draw some lessons from 9/11. I remember after 9/11, 2001, how all travel stopped. I mean, of course, it had to stop, but then how it came back, and people overcame not only their fear of travel, but they also really embraced the idea of once again, socially gathering. So I think that spirit is alive and well, and I expect we'll be back in terms of metrics, and Mark has introduced the concept of RevPAR. You're a hotel expert now.
Yeah, right. One.
The experts would say that we will achieve 2019 results, 2019 being a good year. We'll regain our RevPAR results in 2023 or 2024. Rate will come back, probably occupancy won't achieve 2019 levels until 2024. That's a long time from now. My hope, my projections, my business plan is sort of predicated on returning to profitability. We're not profitable running a hotel at 35% occupancy, but we'll regain that profitability towards the end of next year, and then drive towards the 2019 milestone, if you will.
That's great. Well, I'm glad to hear that. There is light at the end of the tunnel, even though it's a long tunnel. Well, David, thank you so much. We're out of time, so thanks so much. I don't think we have Q&A, do we? Well, okay. Then we'll move on to Kennedy. Thanks, David. Hi, Kennedy.
Hey, Mark. How are
So,
you?
Kennedy, Executive Vice President of Investments at Cousins Properties, and I can't help but draw the connection between Kennedy Hicks and Colony Square. So, when we were presented with the opportunity to acquire Colony Square in 2015, it was Kennedy who presented us with that opportunity and worked with us. She was on the dark side at the time before she came to the bright side with Cousins. And I guess you left Eastville shortly thereafter, no? How long have you been with Cousins?
2 years.
Oh, okay. So I guess it's been longer than that. But thank you, by the way, for plugging us into this deal. It's been an adventure.
Fun to be here, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. So moving on to the office sector, and we talked, maybe we'll segue from David's talk about urban versus suburban, and the idea that there is underway a mass exodus from urban centers, and the fact that Cousins is heavily invested in the business plan based on urban assets with transit connections. Is that accurate?
That is.
What's your take?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. I'd say the one thing I'd add to that is we're also focused in Sunbelt markets. And so, I joke, we've spent the past 5 years trying to convince the New York REIT analysts that Midtown Atlanta is an urban market. Because we just kind of get painted with this brush of like, oh, it's down in the south, it's not gateway, so that's suburban. And so, I do, yes, I mean, the headlines, people are leaving San Francisco, they're leaving New York, because they've been told that they don't have to come back to work for a year. And so it's a time to go, there's a statistic about, I think, 50% of the people under 29 have gone back to live with their parents right now. And so they're going home to save money, and they know that they can work remotely. What I think happens long term is that they get drawn back to nodes where they can have the community and have the energy that they've been looking for. And it's, the pendulum may not have just swung to all of a sudden everyone's now left urban cities forever. So I do think, we feel fortunate to be in the Sun Belt where we have space We're not necessarily going up an elevator 40 floors. You're going up 10 floors maybe, and there's room to spread out. There's outdoor space. So I do think it's not just black and white, urban versus suburban. It's a little bit more about the markets that you're in and being able to provide that experience for people once they get to the office.
So to the extent that there are show of hands, who's back in the office, working in their office? Wow, that's incredible. That was, Jerome, for your benefit, that was 80% of the people attending here. Maybe the evidence is that you're comfortable being here, so you're comfortable going back to the office. Our current position is that the office is open if you want to come work. If you don't, you can work from home. What is your take, Kennedy, on what's next relative to people inviting or requiring or asking that their teams be in the office?
Well, it's interesting just to think about how that narrative has shifted even since May. Talking to people in May, they're like, I never need to go back to the office, I'm good. And by September, October, it's like, I miss my colleagues, I miss the opportunity to kind of have a little bit more structure, get out of my house, do things, see people, etc. So I think, now I think JLL just put out something that said 3 out of 4 people admit they're ready to come back in some capacity. And so I personally think I love going to the office. I think that's going to continue to change, and by the time there is a vaccine, I think the companies will start making it less of an option and more of a requirement on some cadence, and people will start to come back. You look at a lot of the big tech companies have made news about these very flexible work from home programs. We don't need to go back, and they're doing that to make sure that their employees know that they're gonna let them be flexible, that they care about their health. But then at the same time, they're leasing space and they're planning for the future, and they're going around and finding office environments that work for them. And so I think as people feel comfortable coming back in, then you'll start to see the FOMO factor kick in, and people will start to come back, and I think companies will start to require it at least the growing companies will start to require it, on some basis. And so then I think what's exciting for properties like this is that it's going to be, companies are going to be looking for places where they can entice people back in and give them opportunities to spread out and different experiences once they get there. And so I think people talk a lot about this whole paradigm shift, and I'm kind of like, well, this is already what was happening. We were already trying to provide these environments, and now I think that's going to be even more important. Having the wellness aspects and being able to have outdoor space. And so I guess I'm a believer that this time next year it'll be a very different conversation.
Well, we characterize the pandemic as the great accelerator in a lot of different ways, right? So to the extent that people were developing and becoming attracted to office environments that provided something more than a cube. We often say, when you step outside your front door, where are you? So are you on a city street that provides activity and energy and transit access and all those kinds of things? Do you have public space and activations and so forth? You're obviously heavily invested in an asset that's near and dear to our heart at Avalon. I spoke to John Hagee, who's leasing that asset for y'all the other day, and there is tremendous amount of activity, shockingly.
Occupancy is 15%, but we're showing space.
That's right. Well, we see, it's interesting, occupancy here in Midtown generally is about 15%, but here at Colony Square, for whatever reason, is something like 40, so based on our parking deck counts. So, that our belief is, and I know that yours is, that this experience will accelerate that, and to the point that David made about which of these behaviors is durable, that may be one, right? So we talked a little bit about suburban versus urban, about work from anywhere. One piece I read in Bisnow this morning, actually, Bisnow London did a piece on the behavioral aspects of office, and we read, there's one every day, right? So every one of the trade journals does one. But the prognostication was that fewer people will come to the office, but they'll require more space to spread out than they did before. What's your take on that idea?
I think fewer people will probably come to the office 5 days a week, and so I think employers have now I think trust their employees maybe a little bit more that they can work from home, and now you've invested in the technology and the setup and all of that. But I think people will want to have more space, but I do think they're still going to want a dedicated space when they get there too. And I think it's important, if you're coming into the office, you want to sit around the people that you work with, and you kind of know where to find people, and it's not just some grab a desk for the day. So we've talked to a couple of people that we're in the process of building headquarters for, and they've stopped in May, as they should have done, and said, wait, what are we doing? Do we need to make big changes? Do we need to go change the layout, shrink the building? And what they came back with was like, no, I think a lot of what we had already planned for makes sense, and having maybe allowing for more space between people was a good idea. And I think we'd probably gone a little too far in terms of just density anyway. And so I do think people will still want to have spaces to encourage people to come. And so I think that'll be the interesting piece to see if the density offsets the a little bit of a recessionary environment that we'll be coming out of, and then also just the whether people try to swap density for dedicated work, less density for dedicated workspace. So I think that's where it'll kind of play out in terms of ultimate demand. But what we're hearing is we're netting neutral, maybe 5% less, but time will tell.
So Cousins is now a 66-year-old now, is that right?
We're over 60, so yes.
And is arguably the preeminent, if not one of the top 2 or 3 office developers, owners, operators, moved into and out of products over the years. I mean, when I was at Cousins, we were big in the retail business. The fact that there was a brief foray in industrial, in lot development with Arvida. I'm just trying to think of the history, but it's been interesting to see.
Condos in Miami.
Oh, there you go. Right. That was fun.
Yeah.
To see Cousins move in and out of product types as the markets provide the opportunity. Has this episode in time, the pandemic, caused any new ideas or thoughts relative to Cousins' strategic direction?
No, I don't have a big announcement in that regard, but it has, I think, made us more accepting of the fact that office is ultimately a mixed-use product, and that you're going to have to have retail. We are starting, and we have a few projects where there's a multifamily component with office. And that if done well, they can really complement each other. And so I think we've spent some time, or I know we've spent some time in the past few months just thinking about that as urban land prices have continued to increase, and as things have changed. I think we've become more accepting of the fact that the product types are going to need to mix together, and that we need to be sure that we're thinking about that and accommodating that in what we develop going forward.
It's interesting you mentioned mixed use, because a dear friend of ours, Virgin Mine, Randy Evans, was one to point out in our ULI council. I'm on the Urban Development Mixed Use Council, and he was pointed out in one of our meetings. It was in Boston. So when was that? A year and a half ago.
2 years ago. Yeah.
That all of these, and that's where I got the idea that we're all merging into the hospitality space. Whether you're a multifamily developer and you're engaged in the amenities arms race, or you're doing retail and you're creating an experiential environment, or if you're in an office space and amenitizing your buildings with public realm and amenities. What's your take on that? Where's Cousins going when it comes to hospitality?
I I mean, it's something that we're talking about all the time in terms of how we design our buildings. You know, making a lot more horizontal space as opposed to vertical space for people to come and congregate. So yes, I think it is. You know, it's a focus. We've now got a lot of restaurants that we've been working with certainly over the past few months. But restaurants create a ton of energy and are great for projects. Public spaces are great for projects. So I think we're embracing it, and we're going to keep looking for ways to add that element.
So as a REIT and answering to shareholders with public, in a publicly traded vehicle, how do you respond to the shareholders' concerns about credit? I guess maybe the restaurant space is such a small portion of what the overall building's NOI and cash flow is about. You're not as concerned maybe as we are about credit of restaurateurs, because as David will attest, that business, the F&B business, has just gotten destroyed. And we've got 6 or 7 restaurants that are either open or about to open here at Colony Square, and we're concerned about their health, especially their financial health. How do you underwrite a deal like that?
I mean, again, I do think just given the public space we play in, we do try to keep that to certain percentages of NOI and make sure we're thinking about that. But I think ultimately, we view it as a partnership, and you got to pick your partners, and it's sometimes less about the big names, and it's more about who you think is going to be right for that market and that project. And we're willing to invest on the front end to make sure that it's a successful concept. Because I think it's to your point, I think we do have a little bit of a benefit in that we've got a significant part of our income is still and will be from office, but we recognize that it's going to be a partnership, and we have to work with our restaurants and keep on the front end of what's going on and what's working.
Great. Well, Kennedy, I think that's it. We're out of time, and I guess no Q&A. Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. Next up, we have Jerome Russell, president of H.J. Russell and Company. Jerome is a Midtown resident and frequenter of Colony Square, and even more so now that IPIC is going to open in a week or so. Welcome, Jerome.
Thank you.
Jerome and I, we chased a deal together. We can't tell you which deal it was because we didn't win it. And we had dinner together in this city that we were chasing this deal. And we had a great opportunity to catch up and hadn't for a long time. So it's good to have my friend Jerome here with me. Has anyone here seen Building Atlanta, the Herman J. Russell story? Go home, take an hour, watch the entire thing. Jerome prompted me to do so at dinner that night, and I did so. And it is Jerome's dad, Herman, who I unfortunately didn't know, was an icon in this industry in Atlanta. And in the documentary, there's a piece where Bob Holder talks about Herman bidding on the drywall at Colony Square in the 70s. And Herman had built a business originally as a plasterer, built a business in various other trades in the construction business, and Bob recognized that Herman was operating a minority-owned contracting business in the 70s in Atlanta, Georgia, which is a relatively unknown entity, and was concerned about Herman's ability to keep up. And as it turned out, Bob said he essentially had to get out of Herman's way because he was going to mow him down and move so quickly. So, another tie-in, sorry for that shameless plug about Colony Square, but a good tie-in to Jerome and Herman.
Sure.
Jerome, what would you like to share with us this morning?
Sure. Well, Mark kind of told my story, but that's fine. So the year was 1971. And my father was, Bob Holder, who started Holder Construction, and my father are the same age. They were in their early 40s then. So my father was a prosperous up-and-comer
in the plastering construction business in his early years of starting Holder Construction. So my father submitted a bid, as Mark said, and when they received the bid back, you know, in the fire, it was fireproofing, which is the stuff that you have right up here. My father's company was the low bidder. And Bob's people came to him and said, hey, Russell's a low bidder, but it's a black company. And Bob said, well, let's check him out and, you know, make sure everything's okay and let's get going. So he came back, we got the contract, and as Mark said, Bob will tell you today that they had to get out of his way. The concern was just the opposite. From that relationship, which started right here in 1971 at Colony Square, they became friends. Okay, first they developed a relationship, and that relationship went on to multiple projects, from all of the administrative buildings that Delta, Holder, and Russell did. We did the Wachovia Operations Center and headquarters in Winston-Salem. As the time went on and the business transition to our family, my brother, myself, and sister, and of course for Holder to Tommy, and John, we kept working together. From Concourse E into our latest venture, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, where it was Holder, Russell, Moody, and Hunt. So in addition to that relationship, Bob was the sponsor of my father to Capital City Club. My father was the first black member of the Capital City Club. It was probably back in the 90s, early 90s. And Bob told me he was really chastised for putting my father up. And what Bob will tell you, that relationship was more beneficial to him and had him see things in a way that he's never seen before. And kind of the point I want to make about that story is diversification, socially and economically, is our strength here. And to the point where, believe it or not, when I leave here, I'm going to meet with Bob and Tommy. I mean, this was totally not planned. I'm going to meet with them. We're doing an Innovation and Entrepreneur Center, and they are going to be supportive of us in that. And I talked to Bob this morning. I said, Bob, I'm going to tell the story. And he says, great. He says, Jerome, I just want to let you know, this gift that we're going to, and support we're going to give you, is about the family and the relationship. It's not about business. So there's a deep underlying strength we have in our diversity here. And I would say that the thing that, if I go forward 50 years and I look at where we are today, the city has grown, this metro area has grown. We haven't had those types of stories of a Bob Holder and Herman Russell. And we really have to kind of reach deep in and start developing diversity within our economics and within our relationships, and pushing ourselves to really kind of push ourselves, you know, to get kind of comfortable with the uncomfortable, because that's where our greatness will come. So,
well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that story. You know, it strikes me that Russell, North American Properties, and Cousins are all 60-something-year-old companies, but you're the only one who was literally born into it, and you were part of the J. Russell Company before you were born. And you've grown up, spent your entire life and career here in Metro Atlanta. What's your take on the current state of real estate, because that's what we're going to talk about? And you touched on diversity. I want to come back to that. I want to talk to you about the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. But tell me, what's your take on real estate?
Well, we're at the start of a new decade. this is Jerome speaking. I think the next 10 years on a go-forward basis versus the previous 10 will be 1.5 to 2 times the economic velocity. All right? And why do I say that? It's the diversification of our economy is phenomenal here. And I'll just start with the airport in Delta. Okay, I feel that the airport will continue to grow. It will continue to be a convenience, and it will continue to be a strategic advantage for this area. Our educational institutions are great. And our educational institutions also are very diverse in its population. Okay, whether it's African American, white, Asian, it is one of the most diverse educational systems in the United States. Healthcare, we got the CDC here, with Emory, all these institutional drivers are here. And then we have this emerging film and entertainment business, all right? So it's on fire. And on top of that, I think the $1 trillion companies, the tech companies, are going to double down here. I find the Microsoft acquisition over by the quarry extremely interesting. And I hear it's going to be huge, what they're going to do. And I think the tech companies will come here because of the talent and the diversity. So I think all of this is about to converge on us. And I think it's going to be metro-wide. I think the suburban-urban is real. So I see not just growth in the urban sector, I see what I call suburban-urban opportunities that will present itself. So I'm very bullish. There are challenges within that, but I think we're in for an unbelievable run in the next 2 years.
So I want to get back to the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, but obviously through the summer of 2020, the country was disrupted and torn apart by the issue of racial injustice, and this industry has historically been a bunch of lily white guys from Buckhead with shiny shoes and blue blazers. You and I may be two of the only minorities in the room, and the fact that this industry shows very little racial diversity and very little gender diversity, to be honest, is a challenge. You and I spoke about this when we had dinner that night. What is your take on how we can resolve that aspect of our enterprise?
Well, we have major income and wealth inequality here in Metro Atlanta, okay? So I saw a statistic yesterday where the Atlanta inequality is similar to New York. And what I mean there is the median income is $60,000. The middle is $60,000. The top 20% is $226,000 in income, and then the bottom is like $8,000 to $9,000. Okay, so that inequality at the low end is problematic, and most of the inequality are black people at the low end. But we also have a higher income of African Americans at income, and also wealth. So the ability to first acknowledge that and also correlate education, attainment, particularly early childhood education, I think is absolutely critical that we first state the inequality and then talk about programs, particularly around education, to deal with it. And we're not going to, we're not going to be able to solve all the problems. Where we feel this is kind of the Russell family, and what we're doing is through wealth inequality. And we feel that entrepreneurship, particularly with African Americans, is the way to change that platform. And just take the Russell, for example. I mean, Egbert Perry incubated out of H.J. Russell. And you see he has a very successful company and employing a lot of people. Noel Khalil incubated out of H.J. Russell and Company. T. Dallas Smith incubated out of H.J. Russell and Company. Artist Johnson, who does a lot of construction with Winter, incubated out of H.J. Russell and Company. So we have to create business growth, and the story I told you, we have to get very deliberate, particularly in the private sector, to be very deliberate in the inclusion around African Americans and other minorities in the process, not just at the construction level, but at the ownership level. So that's what our center is about, is being a place that will provide an opportunity where we can use our network to try to bridge and change a lot of these inequalities.
So, in response to the Black Lives Matter movement this summer, many of our organizations have looked inward and tried to assess what our situation was and try to rectify within our own organizations, and then start to reach out to the community. The Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship predated this summer, obviously. I've been invited, along with a number of executives, one from Cousins and one from Russell, Michael, your brother. Will be joining a group that will be meeting with the president of Morehouse College about creating a real estate center in a university center to expose young African American entrepreneurs who may be studying whatever at AUC to expose them to real estate. Have no clue whether or not that's going to get any traction, but the fact is that those of us who are in the decision-making process here in this room need to contribute to that effort. I'm embarrassed to say that it was a result of what the unrest that we saw this summer. But you founded the Russell Center long before that because you felt like there was an entrepreneurship void. What are the next steps at the Russell Center?
Okay. Well, I'm heading over there after I leave here. When the pandemic happened, we just had to step back and just kind of see where everything was going, and understanding how it was going to flow. And it was really my daughter, who's a 20-year-old who's in college, who said, "Dad, just kind of the new movement is going to be a little bit more decentralized. Our generation is not interested in command and control." So, for example, Black Lives Matter it's a very decentralized organization that is really advocating for equality. But you notice there's no leader around that. So I think the future, the generation is this is going to be more of a pluralistic movement as we go forward, because I'm middle age. We got different ages in here, but it's really the next my kids who are in their 20s and 30s that will really be the change agents for the future. So and we have to lead here, because the demographics here in Metro Atlanta are the most progressive as it relates to addressing inequality around education, health, economics, etc. Because we have the educational institutions, we have the leadership, and we have the diversity in our demographics to make it happen. So there's a big responsibility on all of us in here, particularly leaders, to acknowledge and be deliberate about creating that change that's going to be needed, because it's going to happen. I mean, it's coming here. It's not. I don't think things are going to slow down here. It's just going to keep moving forward, because we have all of the characteristics of a successful area, economically and socially and educationally.
Great point. And to Jerome's point about it's the next generation. I look around the room. There are a number of young faces in the room that will take up the mantle of all of these initiatives that we're seeking to advance. As what struck me, and I want to circle back to the Building Atlanta documentary about Herman J. Russell. Herman left a legacy that many of us, I personally, aspire to, having made a difference. And what Bob Holder and Herman Russell created in that friendship and that relationship set a tone, and that is something I think that all of us can carry forward. So I think we're out of time. Jerome, thanks so much. Will?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there have been some fascinating statistics thrown out throughout this morning's discussion, but two statistics that have not been mentioned that are also quite important, especially during flu season and while we battle this pandemic, is that while there's no vaccine, we know for a fact that vitamin C, or vitamin C in America, is good for you. And the two, whilst alcohol in large quantities can reduce your immune system, there are some studies that say a glass of champagne can actually improve your immunity for a short period of time, which is why we've decided to serve mimosas today. We take your immunity incredibly seriously. Mark Toro and his team and Bisnow team take your health as a huge priority, and those will be being dished out now. We have another 30 minutes or so to network safely, responsibly. I want to thank the Bisnow team for putting this event together. I want to thank Sarah, Mark's team for putting this event together. And I want to thank you all for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. Thank you again, and we'll see you all again soon. Have a great day, everyone.